Okay, so I wanted to sit down and kind of talk about Metroid Prime 4 for a minute. I think me and a lot of people were really fucking excited for this, I almost said show, this game to come out. I have been, throbbing since 2017, so what is that, fucking 9 years for this shit to come out? I bought it the day it released. I literally left work on my break to go to the store to pick up this game so I could go straight home after work. I didn't want to have to go by the store after work to go pick it up. I wanted to make sure I had it. I gotta be honest. I thoroughly enjoyed the game when I played it. I didn't thoroughly enjoy it because it was a Metroid game. I thoroughly enjoyed it because I was just fiending and I was just rock hard for anything that had the word Metroid on it at the time, especially Prime, because the Prime series is probably just one of my favorite series of all time. I think Prime 1 and 2 are some of my favorite games of all time. I am a Prime 2 supremacist. I think that Prime 2 is the best game in the series, although I can completely understand why people think it's 1. They're wrong. But that being said, I'm planning on titling this video something along the lines of Metroid Prime 4 wasn't for us. And the reason that I say that is I don't think that Metroid Prime was for the people that originally played it. I mean, you got to take into consideration that Metroid Prime 1 came out in 2001, 2002. Prime 2 came out a couple years after that, around 2004, I think. I am like freeballing this. I got my balls in my hand and I'm just slapping them around trying to figure out what the dates are. And then a few years after that, in 2007, we get Metroid Prime 3. And I think Metroid Prime 3 compared to Prime 4 is a masterpiece. And I go back, I played all 3 Prime games right before I played Prime 4. They're all incredible compared to Prime 4. I think that there is a serious ideological shift at Nintendo when it comes to Metroid. I think that this problem also is apparent in Metroid Dread, because if you remember, I love Metroid Dread. I think Metroid Dread is the best or second best 2D Metroid game. I think it's a fucking masterpiece. Although a lot of other people complained about another thing about the game, and it's the fact that it felt pretty linear. Now, is the game literally linear? No. It's an invisible hand that kind of guides the player through the entire game, because I think that the idea that the player can get lost in a world is, let's say, unpleasant for Nintendo to think about. You're probably thinking, well, what about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Well, you can get lost in those games, but you're not frustrated because there's always something to be found, if that makes sense. You're always proceeding towards a goal. I would say that you can get lost, but you're always moving towards the next thing. It's kind of like Skyrim, where maybe you're not going straight to the next area on the map, but maybe you found this cave, and in this cave you found, I don't know, fucking Meridia's Beacon, and then you got to go to the fucking Meridia's Temple and do that bullshit, and then you want to... But, like, the point that I'm trying to make is the fact that, unlike Metroid, these games are more open-ended. They're fully, they're games that you can't really get lost in, but you can still get lost in. In Metroid, you get lost in Metroid, you only have one objective to go towards. I mean, you have, like, certain power-ups and stuff like that, but if you get lost in a Metroid game, you're lost, and it's frustrating. And that frustration, I think, is what Nintendo is afraid of turning people off. Now, despite Dread hiding this, they hid this behind a veil of making you feel like that you're going through and you're navigating this world by itself, because guess what? You can get lost in Dread. When I say invisible hand, I mean that shit's invisible. There is nowhere telling you where to go, but the game design is so tightly woven that the path forward, it just so happens to be the path that you can take. But you don't necessarily have to take the beaten path, and some people might go and be like, oh, I want to go get this power-up, or I want to explore this area at this point, which is maybe not what the linear path had initially intended for them to do. And that's where you can get lost in Dread. If you're watching this right now and you got lost in Dread, it's not because you're stupid, it's just because you happen to take a different path than what the game had originally intended for you to take. And I say intended very loosely here. But I'd be shocked if that ideology had not come from Nintendo themselves. Because if you look back on something like Prime or Prime 2 or Super Metroid, the game is not linear. There is no invisible hand guiding you through the game. You yourself have to do a detailed analysis of the map and figure out where you need to go. You need to remember certain landmarks and certain areas where you couldn't make it the first time. I think a great example of this is something like Hollow Hollow Knight. I think Hollow Knight also does a great job of this too. Maybe Blasphemous. Maybe just another fucking Metroidvania I can pull out of my ass. But all of these games have this understanding that you are going to get lost, you are going to get frustrated, but you will eventually, or maybe not, you might quit the game and not eventually find your way back, but eventually you'll find your way back for the people that do. It won't be everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I don't think that that's something that Nintendo finds appealing. And we know that there's always been a detachment between Nintendo and what the actual consumer wants. We've seen it time and time again, and we've seen it almost most prevalently within the Metroid franchise during the Metroid drought of the mid to late 2010s. Metroid Prime 4 is afraid to let go of your hand. Metroid Dread was also afraid to let go of your hand. I would say, here's the best way I can describe it. Metroid Dread pulled you. Metroid Prime 4 pushed you. The reason I say this is when Metroid Dread is pulling you, it's not looking behind them. You know, when you're pulling someone, like this, you're pulling them like that. And, eventually, you lose them, you turn around, they're gone. Prime 4, Prime 4 is right behind you, pushing up on your butt. It's looking at you the whole time, and it does not let you go. You can't just escape. It's behind you, pushing you. Dread can lose track of you. Prime 4 cannot. And I think that that's the biggest flaw of Prime 4 from a game design perspective, is that it's not a Metroid game. It is an action-adventure, first-person shooter, or first-person action-adventure game. But the linearity of Prime 4 goes just a little bit too far. I don't want to even mention the overworld, the desert, the motorcycle. I don't really care about those things right now. Those are flaws in and of themselves, but the main flaw of Prime 4 is it does not let go of your hand. Dread had this same exact, I wouldn't say problem, game design philosophy, except they were able to work around that by making a beaten path, but creating a labyrinth around it. Prime 4 made the beaten path, but forgot to make the labyrinth around it. For anybody who is a Metroid fan who has not played Prime 4, and I can't imagine there's very many of you, although 3 million people did play Dread, and I think only, 1 million played Prime 4? If you've played a Metroid game and you've gotten lost, or you've come off the beaten path to find a power-up, there really isn't much of that here. You are always going towards an objective, and the objective is always right in front of you. And I think that's why Prime 4 was not made for us. And they've made a pretty generic action-adventure game that could have come out 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Another big disappointment about Prime 4 is the story. Do not go into Prime 4 thinking that there is some fascinating story. There is not. I know, because there were so many instances. There were so many instances in this fucking game. I was like, oh, we're going to learn about this. Oh, this is happening. This is really cool. But that never ended up happening. As a matter of fact, the only part of the game where I felt that this lore situation was genuinely fascinating to me is in the snow area. I don't even remember the research facility in the snow area. It's just Phendrana drifts, but less Phendrana drifts, really. But there is this story that you find out about through audio logs, and the entire area has this extremely creepy atmosphere, which reminds me so much of the different creepy areas from Prime 1, 2, and 3. I think the Prime games, at least the first 3, were some of the best atmospheric experiences I have ever played in a single video game. Those games have atmosphere figured the fuck out. And Prime 4, I think, comes so close. It edges me, but it doesn't let me finish. My shit is about to burst, and then it lets go. I'm going to look at this half glass full. Glass half full? I'm going to look at this optimistically. Prime 4 did poorly at the box office. It did not sell nearly as well as really anybody would have anticipated, and unfortunately, I can't really blame them, because all in all, it's a pretty forgettable experience. I think you have a great coat of paint. I think you have a pretty good combat system. I don't know who the fuck is shitting on the combat system. Some of the greatest bosses and some of the greatest combat encounters in the entire series. The game looks absolutely incredible. It's just missing the core of what makes Metroid. However, glass half full, right? I'm going to say optimistically. Nintendo has tried in creating a linear Metroid experience to bring in newcomers, and they realize that hasn't worked. It worked for Dread, and I think 2D Metroid will continue to flourish. but Prime 4, and maybe it's because of the fact that it had to change studios halfway through. Maybe it's the fact that Retro doesn't have the same people it used to. But my anticipation is that the next game in the series will take more risks, as it does seem like that they're going for another, like a subsequent trilogy. I think that there is a new story that they're trying to tell. It's going to continue. There is not a sense of finality to the end of Prime 4. Prime 5 is inevitable. How long it will take to get to Prime 5, I don't know. And I can't even say that the story that we have is a story that I even want to fucking pursue at all. Sorry, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but you probably heard this one before. They didn't even make my boy Silex like a main villain. They did not make his ass a main. He was there. He was just there. Bro, it was like a song featuring. He didn't even make the song. It wasn't even him. So like, what's the fucking point? I don't know. I'm going to end this. You know what? I'm all done. But we probably shouldn't, but like, we should probably buy the game so we can get another one. But, yeah. All right, bye.